everyone, and welcome back to Red Brick Recap. It's episode number 23. And first of all, we hope you enjoyed our new intro music. That kind of took both of us by surprise. I don't think either of us were expecting the new theme song to come in. But yeah, we're back. It's week 23. I'm joined once again by my co-host, Ted Brennan. Ted, how are we doing on this fine Thursday afternoon?
As the great John Rothstein says, we will sleep in May. March is just around the corner, coming up literally in 2 days. On Saturday, it will be March, which is the greatest time of the year if you are a college student or just a fan of college basketball in general.
100% correct. We saw a little bit of March Madness last night, first of all, with that Michigan State Maryland ending. I don't know if you caught it, but like a 65-foot heave to win the game for Michigan State on away floor. That's just the appetizer, right? We've got a full month of just insane college basketball action coming up. We'll talk a little bit about Miami's college basketball team in a few minutes here. But I mean, man, I'm fired up. It's the best time of the year. I can't wait for Selection Sunday. I can't wait for tournament season. I'm like giddy just thinking about it.
Did you see the photo of it's the Maryland student section, and the ball is not even close to the rim, right? Like,
yeah.
Whatever the screenshot it was, it's not even close to the rim. Every student in the student section is in the surrender cobra. They immediately knew as soon as it went off. That is also a fun fact. That's their first home loss since November.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, that entire last sequence was crazy. I was lucky enough to catch it live, but man, like what are you doing taking that shot with like 6 seconds left on the clock? Like, that's a bad last shot selection, bad rebounding, and you can't let a guy get that open with that little time on the clock. There was comedy of errors.
I so badly wanted like him to take that shot. Like, I'm not a Michigan State fan. I'm not even a Maryland fan, so like doesn't really matter to me. But watching it live, I wanted him to take that shot. And as soon as he took the shot, my first reaction was the Denzel Valentine clip where it's like, "Oh my goodness, Valentine!"
Oh my goodness,
and then he sinks it.
It's not the shot.
And then he sinks it. And then I was like, "Well, never mind."
Yeah, shows what we know, right? Well, let's jump right in. Let's stop talking about basketball teams that aren't based in Oxford, Ohio. Let's talk about kind of a little like minor news item that's kind of floating around the Miami community in the last week or so. That is the petitions coming out around the proposed Cook Field basketball arena. Obviously, we've talked at length about this topic, so we won't spend too much time on it. But the pushback from the community and, frankly, the students at large has been a lot more loud than I was expecting it to be. I knew people were going to be upset about it. I knew, like, oh no, we're taking away a green space. Like, people were always going to be upset. I understand that. We saw that coming. The volume of which complaints are coming out and the magnitude that some of them are getting to is beyond a level of backlash I've seen, and I think during my time at this university, at least with regard to athletics.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I was not expecting the response to be this loud, especially considering like we don't tend to get too loud about athletics as like a whole. So it is a little bit surprising to see like people be this upset about it. I will say I'm happy about it. I think we've both been vocal enough that we are not necessarily the biggest fans of the Cook Field movement. I think specifically like on your tweet, there were people tweeting, commenting on your post like, "Oh man, such great memories on Cook Field, intramurals, playing flag football, just lounging around, doing whatever." And I know, that's where they put, occasionally every now and again, they'll have like mega fair down at Cook Field. And I think that is a massive, massive loss for the university that I don't necessarily think they are totally thinking through, because I think they want the arena, they want a hotel. But if you think logistically, they're gonna have to make a lot more parking over there. Because if you look at Millett Hall's parking, there's a ton of parking over there, and when it gets packed, it's packed. So there is not a lot of parking over there. And then you say, okay, well, what if we just put the parking at Millett? Then you got to figure out shuttle system and all these different things, right? And it just creates a lot more congestion in terms of the cars in like right there. Like, shit, that is a ton of cars right there. And Miami's committed to lowering the pollution rates or or carbon neutrality or whatever it may be. So I don't know. I'm glad that people are speaking up. Shout out Dr. Brody Ruley for bringing that up the other day in our class. And I'm excited to see kind of where these petitions go, to see if the university actually will listen, because again, I really do think that Southwest quad is the way to go, because of like it's right there with Goggin, it's right there with everything else, and I don't know. That's kind of my soapbox.
Well, I completely agree with you. Like the Southwest Quad, in my opinion, was the better site for purely a basketball reason, for purely student engagement, building a nice arena, having the infrastructure there. If it was only a basketball arena, Southwest Quad's perfect. Cookfield has the space to add that, whatever else they want to add, whether that's, the event space, the hotel, whatever it might be, which Lord knows Oxford needs more hotel rooms. I mean, I can speak for myself, like going through graduation last year, we paid a small fortune just to like have my family in Oxford for graduation. And that's a financial strain that could be lowered with more hotel rooms. So I understand that. I also understand the student frustration of kind of commercializing a special place to them and taking away something that is a valuable asset for students in replacement of a thing designed to drive revenue for the university. I understand that frustration. It is a business move. I understand that. At the same time, I also kind of look at the students like, you guys are the reason we were kind of forced to move. Millette's been a ghost town for the last 10 years. And the issues that are glaring with Millette, whether that be the size, the fact that it's out of date, the fact that it needs a ton of renovation, were amplified by the fact that nobody was at the games. You can't have it both ways. You can't not care about athletics and then suddenly care when something you don't like happens. So that's still my big frustration, is how many people are speaking about an issue that has been an issue for the past 5 years. And is the fact that there's no secret that Millette needed updating, or something had to give. Either Millette needed a renovation or they needed a new basketball arena. And that felt like it went under the radar, and now it's finally on the radar. People are upset about it, when in reality we probably should have been upset about this 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from with that. I do agree. Like, you can't have we can't all have our cake and eat it too. Like, we can't play this double-edged sword of, oh, we're not going to show up to games, but then when they're threatening to do something we don't like, now we're going to voice our opinions. But at the same time, like, Miami has been moving really, really fast on this. I think if both teams weren't as good as they were this season, I don't know if we're having the same discussion. Or it might be they're starting to think about it, right? Yeah. It was kind of amplified by the fact, like, the teams are good, so they need to hop on this momentum. They can't have another 2 to 3 years of them playing in Millette without knowing, whatever. They got to hop on this. There's a ton of momentum around both basketball teams in Ohio right now and in Oxford right now. So I don't think there was a lot of awareness, and I think that's on the university for not saying, hey, we're starting these discussions. And maybe they had started these discussions 3 years ago, 2 years ago. But at least from like a student perspective, again, and I'm saying this from a student perspective, I'm not saying this from somebody who works with the athletic department, this did kind of come out of nowhere. Because at first the proposal was, okay, they're going to talk about renovating Millette. And it's like, great, they'll do it over the summer. They'll make it nice. We'll come back. It'll be great. Awesome. And then all of a sudden and that was the only thing we knew for a couple of years. And then all of a sudden it's, hey, we're going to just build an entirely new arena. And it's like I feel for the students who who kind of didn't see this coming. But again, like, it goes back to your point of, like, you got to show up if you don't like something. So, like, show up to Millette.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think there was a ton of awareness about it. You'd have to really look hard to hear about this place. Because I remember reading something in the Miami Student probably around this time last year that this was kind of taking the next step. The planning process was going to go forward, which also, shout out Miami Student. They rock. Great student newspaper. If you have a chance, go check out their website. They rock. Our good friend of the program will be on here, not this week, hopefully next week, Kathan Babu, editor of the sports section. He rocks. So shout out Miami Student. But they did a great piece articulating what the plan was for the future of, like, the basketball arena. And they stated that plans were not necessarily in progress, but like preliminary talks were being held about moving to another site. Now it actually happened. And I don't think, at least I can speak for myself, I didn't expect it to happen this fast. I think that the university was very opportunistic in capitalizing on the fact that our teams are good this year. And we can kind of make the argument of that, like, if we're going to have a good basketball program, we need an arena to match it, which I get. That's a very smart, business savvy move. At the same time, I question. We've had this conversation off camera, so I'm not going to, we're not going to dive into this wormhole, but like, I do question if there were other areas that this money could be invested in to make the university better that are not going towards a basketball arena for a program that frankly historically hasn't been very good over the last 20 years. Obviously that's a little harsh considering the success they've had this year, but frankly, Miami basketball has been our fourth most popular sport, putting that, and that's probably generous. So I do question if the resources committed to this project could have been better utilized elsewhere on campus or in other areas. But again, that is much higher level decision making that I am not privy to. So I'm not going to sit here and speculate on that.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Miami is not putting as much money as forward as we think they are. I think they are trying heavy to lobby to some of the richer members of their alumni network. I mean, we do have like one of the highest success rates for Fortune 500 CEOs. And all they have to do is like say, hey, donate to the basketball arena. We'll name a section after you, or we'll give you a plaque on the wall or something. And for some reason, that extrinsic motivation of saying, oh, wait a second, I got my name on the wall. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to donate money. So I wouldn't be surprised if like the university isn't donating as much as we think or putting forward as much as we think, because like there are so many places on campus that need some deep renovations. Shout out Western Campus, Peabody Hall. I lived there my freshman year. That looks like the hotel from The Shining. So that could, use a little bit of an update. I know Thompson Hall is closed down. McKee. I mean, so there's some places that could use some renovation. But yeah, for a school that like honestly is kind of openly has like talked about not having as much resources as they used to, especially before COVID, it is kind of a weird decision to see like, okay, we're going to pour $120 million into a basketball arena when we could have just renovated it for $80 million, because $40 million is a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. I also think that, again, my personal opinion, Mueller had to go. It was great. It served its purpose. It was great for its age. We need something new. Mueller we referenced the article that, ranked the best MAC basketball arenas. Mueller came dead last. And I think it's kind of the Moneyball thing where it's like, here's the good arenas, here's the meh arenas, here's the bad arenas, and then there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's Mueller. So I do think that the right decision was made in needing a new basketball arena. I think every decision made around that original decision has been questionable, if not up for real like discussion about like this might have been handled very poorly and might lead to significant issues down the line.
If we're going to reference baseball movies, let's reference Field of Dreams. If you build it, they'll come. And I mean, that is the mentality that Miami is having right now. If you build it, they will come. And, we can move on from this because we have talked about this at length on other pods, and we're almost, 15 minutes into this one. But the last thing I'll say is, for the new arena, please, I am begging that they do like a north, east, south, and west entrance, and each entrance has a statue. I really think we need a Charlie Cole statue, because he has just been so influential for the basketball program, and he still holds so much weight in this basketball program. I mean, you listen to Travis Steele, he talks about Charlie Cole's all the time. So I would love to see a Charlie Cole statue, and then obviously a Wally and Ron Harper statue on the other entrances, and then move that Wayne Embry statue over to the new arena. But I think that's a good segue into moving on from Millette.
Yeah, let's jump off our soapbox. Let's stop talking hypotheticals. Excuse me. Let's talk about what happened on Tuesday, on a gorgeous Oxford Tuesday afternoon. Literally picturesque, 60 degrees, sunny. I mean, you walk around campus and the town was abuzz. It was our first like nice day out of the semester since like the winter, and we got pummeled this winter with snow and cold. So this town was ready to go, and they showed out on Tuesday. When I managed to stop by the baseball home opener on Tuesday against Wright State, it was packed. It was a good crowd, which I guess at least in my opinion, Miami baseball has not seen a crowd like that, at least since I've been here. Again, it is the home opener. It was a Tuesday. It was 60 degrees outside in February. Sure, that helped. But home opener against Wright State, we've talked about it at length. Wright State has Miami's number in every sport for some reason. We just cannot find a way to beat them. And it happened again. I mean, Miami could not have played a better offensive baseball game. And Wright State just kept finding a way to come back into the game.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. Just the Wright State, like they should, instead of being called the Raiders, they should be called the Demons, because we just cannot fight these demons in any sport. I think we play them next Tuesday on the road at Wright State, so hopefully we can kind of finally conquer the Demons. But I think last year we had a game against Wright State that was like a really, really high scoring affair. If not, it was against maybe Indiana State or something. But regardless, the team is going to go as far as the pitching takes them. I think we've seen a lot of high scoring affairs for this Redhawks team, and the offense can only do so much when the pitching isn't on it. And that's, I mean, pitching has been a bit of a mess so far.
Every game they've won, they've given up 5 or less runs. And then the losses you look at, there's the 13-3, the 9-5. The Eastern Tennessee State one, the 2-1 loss is kind of the outlier here, but 17-7, 11-10 on Tuesday. That's a lot of runs for a team that, even if you base it on this, like even if we score 6-7 runs a game, we might give up 10. So like, where are the fixes going to be for this pitching staff? We talked about it preseason that the pitching staff was going to be key. We've seen some really good performances. Troy Banko has been an absolute stud so far for this team. He's got a 1.8 ERA, 0.9 whip, 10 innings. And granted, only 10 innings pitched. It's been a short season so far. But Carson Byers, we talked about in preseason, 1.93 ERA in 3 appearances. He started one game, but I mean, he came into that Wright State game on Tuesday and shut them down for an offense that was rolling. But then you look at the other end, and we talked about it last week too, but Luke Ross still has a 99 ERA. Nick Vardis is a 27 ERA. Ahmad Haraji got the start on Tuesday, got shelled, 27 ERA. What, at this point of the season, what changes need to be made, or what can Coach Smiley do to kind of look at this staff and go, okay, these are the guys that are going to get me reliable innings? Because right now, outside of 3-4 guys, I don't see a full staff here.
Yeah, I am glad that I am not Coach Smiley and I don't have to figure this out. But yeah, I mean, you look just kind of up and down the roster, and like only 3 pitchers currently have the requirement of 1 inning pitched per game. And that's Banko, Byers, and Burke. And Burke has a 5.63 ERA, 5.6 ERA, and I mean, Banko and Byers, they're relief pitchers. We're not trying to throw them for a ton of innings. Well, I guess Banko's pitched 5 innings.
I could see Banko being a starter. He's 6'6", 220. He's got the build to be a starter.
I mean, I think Banko's and Byers are. I mean, they're going to be starters / openers, because Banko's pitched against who did he pitch against? The Citadel and ETSU, and then Byers pitched 4 against the Citadel, 4.1 versus Wright State. Also, this is annoying. Wright State, in the 4.1 innings that Byers pitched, 3 hits, 2 earned runs, 5 strikeouts. That means in less than 5 innings, they put up another 9 runs.
Yep.
Oh gosh, that is gross.
Yeah, I don't want to dunk on the pitching staff too hard, because we have talked about them at length. But Haraji's line in that for his start was not. I mean, I can't believe Byers took the loss in that. By the way, I'm just looking at the box score now. He took the loss in that game, which is crazy. He was probably the best pitcher on the team that day. But Haraji had 1 inning pitch, he started the second inning, did not get out of the second inning. Or no, pardon me, he got through the first inning and then got pulled before the start of the second. 3 hits, 4 earned runs, 3 walks, 1 hit by pitch. That's not really what you want out of your starter. Yeah, not good. Caden Pfeffer was good. I mean, better, I guess. 4 earned runs and 4 hits, 2 walks. Again, not great. Could have been better, but could have been so much worse. Cole Pauly, Ohio State transfer. Not good. Granted, he only faced, I think, 1 guy, or 3. He only faced 3 batters. So, but Byers was great. We can talk about the lineup at length, but everyone in the lineup seems to be contributing to this offense. I mean, 10 runs against a pretty good Wright State team is never going to be a bad thing. David Novak is proving to be an impressive part of this lineup that honestly I didn't think I saw coming. We knew Novak was a good bat. We knew he was a good glove. I don't think I expected him to be as impressive as he has been with the bat this season. I think he's hitting like close to 300 or 400 right now. I'm double checking that right now. He's hitting 300 with 3 home runs in the first 5 games of the season, or 8 games of the season. That's pretty impressive for a guy that we didn't really expect to be like the big bopper in the middle of the lineup. But yeah, I mean, Evan Applewick's been a revelation. 4 home runs, 387, 1.2 OPS. The offense is not going to be what kills this team. The offense is going to be what keeps this team in games, because up and down this lineup, it looks really good.
Yeah, I mean, Dominic Krupinski, like I think we mentioned him last week, he's hitting 269 with an 882 OPS. I mean, that's pretty nice. Pretty nice. It's nice to have, your starting catcher hitting 300 with a 933 OPS. And then, I mean, Evan Applewick, he was just named the Max Scholar Athlete of the Week because, I mean, the kid has been on fire. And, I mean, he's hitting 387. So hopefully he can kind of continue this moving forward. And then one player I do want to shout out is Dylan Baker. He started off the season, like first 2 games, I think he was batting like 161 or something like that, way below the Mendoza line. And he's brought it back up to 290, almost 300 with a 797 OPS. So, shout out Dylan because he turned around after some tough stretches to start. But I mean, yeah, like you said, the slugging is not, or the offense is not what's going to kill this team. What's going to kill this team is just the pitching, unfortunately. And I mean, the team is going to come and go as much as the pitching comes and goes.
Yeah, 100%. Baker's on a 6-game hit streak right now, so we'll see how he pulls that into the weekend. He started the season 0 for 7, is now hitting around 290, I think you said. Another thing I want to shout out is the team defense. Really pretty good so far. I mean, it's a little lower than where I'd like it to be. Their fielding percentage is 95% right now. I would like to see that in like the 97, 98 as we get into MAC play, but across the board, most of these like fielding numbers are pretty good. The team defense has been solid. So if they can find a way to keep the walks down and to limit the damage that the walks can do, because that's the main thing I've looked at in the box scores is how many walks that they've given up. They can limit the free passes. You keep the ball in the infield. This could be a really good team. I mean, the offense has the firepower. Evan Applewick, I can talk about him at length because he's got such easy pop. And like it doesn't look like he should have the like light tower power that he has, but like his swing is, I've said it about a couple of different guys this year, but like so violent yet so controlled that he generates such good exit velocities on baseballs that he makes pitches that shouldn't look like they should leave the ballpark. So I'm all over this team. I think that if they can figure out a way to get this rotation working, this could be a really competitive team this year. Obviously, that is a big if given the sample size we've seen so far, but I'm on board. I like what I'm seeing so far.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the fielding. Coach Miley's teams are always, some of the best fielding teams in the nation. He prides himself on the defense. So I think, some of the early season, like, errors or lower fielding percentage that we see, I think that's going to really, really like even out towards the end of the year. Because most of these guys are playing in Coach Smiley's defensive system for the first time, right? So they're doing drills, that they've probably never even done before. So it's all about just learning right now. So yeah, I mean, I think this is gonna be a good team. This is gonna be a good team.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be one of the better teams that Miami's had baseball wise in the last 5 or 6 years. So I'm looking forward to it. Another team we want to shout out before we forget, and before I stupidly passed over on our notes here, Miami men's swim and dive. Really impressive season for them, winning the Missouri Valley Conference in their first time of asking. I mean, we've talked about the swim and dive program. This team's elite. They won MAC titles like it was their job. Now they're moving to a different conference and won the title in their first season. What do you say was the first time since 2003 they've won this conference?
Yeah, so this is their 5th straight conference championship, 4 in the MAC, 1 now in the Missouri Valley Conference. And they were originally in the Missouri Valley Conference for a while before the MAC kind of took hold, and then they left. So this is their first Missouri Valley Conference championship since 2003, and it's their first. it's their 5th straight title, which is just nuts when you think about it. And then, when you lose your head coach, like, that's really tough. But the fact that they were able to win and the coach was able to win Coach of the Year. Why am I forgetting her name? I feel really bad right now. Hold on. Give me a second to pull up her name. But she won Coach of the Year in her first season at Miami. Samantha Pitter. She's the head coach of men and women. Holy crap.
Yeah, 100%. You're absolutely right. We also have the women's MAC championship this weekend. So we'll keep an eye on that for you. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I've had the luxury and the fortunate experience of being friends with most of some of the swim team guys over the last couple of years. And they talk like they're, pretty good. They're, the typical humble athletes. And then you look at what they're able to do in the pool, and it's ridiculous. I mean, Tommy Fry, first in backstroke with a 15:30. Again, I don't know much about swimming. I don't know if these times are good or not, but I know
clearly they are good if they're first, right?
Yeah, they got to be pretty good. I mean, Jensen Nelson set the Missouri Valley Conference record in the 200 backstroke with a 143. That seems pretty good. Owen Hoban and Alan Cotton went 1 and 2 in the 200 butterfly. I mean, Hoban set the Missouri Valley Conference record at 144. He was also the freshman of the year. This is really good. I mean, this is we talked about it a lot with some other sports, but this is a sport that does not get talked about enough on Miami's campus, just because it kind of goes by the wayside of, like, obviously everyone talks about football, basketball, and like the revenue generators, but Miami has good programs pretty much up and down the athletic department and have been very dominant in their conferences on both the men's and women's side for the last 10 years or so. So, I mean, I hope we're doing them justice. Obviously, we can probably do more, and we will try and do more, but these programs have been elite at Miami for the better part of a decade now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said, they've been pretty elite. The women, they're in 3rd place after day 1 of the MAC championships. So they stay in the MAC. They're trailing Akron and OU. So great. But the women's team is also, like, just incredibly strong. And it took Miami till the men's team till day 3 to take the lead of the NBC championships. So, Miami I'm pretty sure they've always kind of started like 3rd or 2nd. I don't think they've ever had like an outright lead from start to finish, but I'm not worried about them. I think it's day 2 today too, or day 2, day 3, and then day 4 is on Saturday. So should be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, the men started from day 3 after day 1, or from the 3rd spot after round 1, or after day 1, and they ended up winning it. So hopefully history repeats itself for the women's team in the MAC tournament. Let's talk about another women's team. Let's talk about softball real quick. I feel like a broken record now. It's another tough weekend, but another, like, learning experience. It's just their non-conference schedule has just been an absolute gauntlet. I think they had, 2 games against I know they played Auburn, who is ranked, Ole Miss ranked, Mississippi State SEC team, and then they got the win against ETSU to finish out the weekend. Again, really tough opponents, good learning experience for them. Good to get the win, so they didn't go 0-4 on the weekend. And also shout out to Jenna Golombisky. I keep butchering that last name. I am so sorry. But 50 career home runs for her over the weekend. So shout out her for getting to that milestone. But yeah, I mean, I'm hesitant to put any stock into my opinions about the softball team until MAC play starts, until we can see what they look like in conference play.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's hard to kind of it's hard to kind of really get a good assessment of this team because they are playing some really, really good teams. Like you mentioned, I mean, Auburn is ranked 18th now. Mississippi State is ranked 16. Like, I mean, Ole Miss is obviously still really good. So like, it is hard to kind of rank these teams, and I don't know how good like any of these teams coming up in the Gopher Classic are. Like, I don't know how good St. Thomas is. I don't know North Dakota State, Minnesota, Dayton. Like, these are all like teams that like I really have no clue who's good, who's not. So once we start getting into the MAC play, which is March 14th, that is the first MAC game against Kent State. That's when things really start to pick up for us, and we'll really kind of go, more in depth, just because it's so hard to rank. It's essentially David and Goliath playing every night. Like,
yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, considering the level of competition Miami's going against on a day in, day out basis, the numbers still look good. Obviously, like for some of the pitching numbers, you like to see that number come down a little bit, but they're playing some of the best softball players in the country. So that's expected. I would like to see what their conference numbers look like once we get into that part of the season. Kaylee O's still hitting 380. Chloe Parks is hitting 290 with a 707. Jalen Gumbowski's OPS is just over 1,000 with 4 home runs. There's still pieces here. There's still a lot to be excited about. Obviously, the record doesn't indicate that, especially after the season that they had last season where they literally set records for the school and were pretty much got national recognition on a pretty seismic level. So it's kind of a down-to-earth moment at least for me, to kind of like watch this team like after the highs that we saw them reach last year, to kind of come back down and be still a very good team, but obviously not at the level that they were last year. So still excited, still a lot to be excited about. And just, I think we talked about it before, but like non-conference play is pretty much the setup for conference play. So once conference play gets rolling, then my excitement level will increase exponentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's much else to say. It's gonna be just a little bit until we are able to fully talk about the softball team at length and in depth. But once we do, I mean, we're gonna bring a lot of stuff to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, they're in Minnesota this weekend, and then next weekend you'll see them live in Oxford for a super busy weekend. Oh my goodness, that weekend might be the death of me. So we have home baseball, I think, home softball, home basketball. I think we have home hockey too, maybe.
Home basketball that week?
March 7th, I thought we had a home game.
Oh, that's right, we do.
Yeah. That's Saturday, or March 8th, or is it? Oh, it is 7th. The Friday, the 7th.
Yeah.
We got selected for Friday. So yeah, we have quite a bit to cover that weekend. So we will be in as many places as we physically can be that weekend, but obviously coverage is pretty tough when there's like 5 teams playing and it's just me and Ted. So we will do our best to bring you that coverage. We also have 2 more guys hopefully helping us out that weekend. Shout out Kathan and shout out Zach. So hopefully we'll get them doing some coverage that weekend as well. But yeah, let's pivot. Let's talk about probably the story that's dominated Miami sports for the last 2 weeks, and that's men's basketball. I mean, where do you want to start? I mean, we can start with the Kent State game because, I mean, holy cow, what a game. I mean, we've talked about it at length. We talked about it after the Toledo game. We talked about it after the Ohio game. But the atmosphere just keeps getting better around Miami basketball, especially on those weekend games, those matinee games in the afternoon. The crowd shows out. It was a ton of fun. I mean, I take it back. I mean, that was the Friday night game, and it was basically sold out, close to it. Crowd was insane. I mean, overtime game. How can I forget that? I mean, that is what college basketball is and should be, and I'm very, very excited that it's finally kind of materializing in Oxford.
Absolutely. This was the first game I had attended as a fan in a really long time, so I was actually really excited for this game. I ended up having to leave at half for some personal reasons, but I was able to catch the second half on TV, which was great. But oh my goodness, was that atmosphere incredible. First of all, in the first half, neither team, it felt like, could miss. It was like bucket after bucket after bucket after bucket. And it was a close game throughout the whole game, which is obviously really nice. You love to see close games, and then for it to go Miami's way, which is even better. And I think that was the game to win that clinched clinched them a playoff spot in the MAC
Yep.
tournament, which is also just huge. Peter Suter scored 1,000 points in that. He scored his 1,000th point in that game, which is just an incredible milestone for him. So congratulations to him. But I mean, yeah, we could talk about Pete Suter in a second, but the guy I want to talk about is Ian Elmer. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who is an absolute stud on the defensive end. I mean, that block. I don't think I've heard Millett louder on television.
You know what?
Than that.
While you keep talking, I'm going to pull that up because I have the video of it.
And I mean, just an incredible defensive effort, and then to follow that up in overtime with an incredibly clutch 3-pointer. I mean, we talk about ice in your veins. I mean, Ian Elmer, ice in his veins. I mean, he is a stud, and obviously, you know, I hope he sticks around at Miami. But if he were to go somewhere else, you know, whoever he plays for next year is going to get a stud. As we look at that block, I mean, first of all, 11 is driving. He switches on a screen. He's like a step behind him, but that length, he's able to reach up and block that shot. And then not only to do that, he blocks it, grabs the rebound, and then throws it on Kent State to get possession back.
Yeah, I mean, it was an insane play. I mean, sitting where I was sitting on press row and having the crowd behind me and also directly to my right, it was deafening when that happened. Like you said it best. Like I have never heard Millett that loud. I've never heard it that excited, especially about basketball. Like we've heard it for like graduation and whatever. We've seen it full, but to have that kind of atmosphere in front of a national audience, I don't think can be understated because that, in my opinion, put Miami on the map in a way that they haven't been in the college basketball landscape in a long time. So Ian Elmer, you said it best. He's been an absolute stud this season. On top of the fact, like he's had to play some really, really tough minutes because of the foul trouble that we've talked about before with Woolfolk and Potter getting into foul trouble against some really talented bigs in this conference. Elmer basically has to play as the big man at times. And we saw it, I forget which game it was, but he had like 14 rebounds when Woolfolk and Potter were both in foul trouble. Played a huge role as we just showed you today on Saturday or on Friday, and with that block, he's been kind of the steady presence that Miami's kind of needed on days where like we've talked about Cam Kraft a ton. He's been kind of slow in the last couple of games. He hasn't had a ton of scoring impact. When Kraft has those off nights or when for whatever reason the shots aren't falling, Elmer always seems to find a way to get to the 15, 16 point mark, even if it's not in the prettiest way.
Yeah, Elmer is one of those guys where if he's shooting the ball well, like he could easily go for 40. And we saw that the other night against NIU. I mean, if they didn't have such a big lead, I easily he could have gotten to 40 easily. Just the way he was shooting the ball, I think he had a career high in 3-pointers made or something like that, or at least attempted. But you're right. When the shots aren't falling for him, he's still going to go and get these gritty, tough baskets. And that's kind of who he's been for this team. He's been that gritty defender who usually has to take some of the toughest matchups. I mean, between the guard play in this league, like the wing play is honestly some of the most underrated parts about the MAC. You hear about the big men, just last year, Enrique Freeman was huge, but we talk about the guard play. I mean, Jalen Terry and Christian Henry up at Eastern Michigan, one of the best backcourt pairings. I've seen the MAC in a really long time. But the wing play is just all of these guys. There's so much parity in this league. All these guys are just like disgustingly lanky. Like they're just lanky. Like they can shoot, they can defend. So he's got some of the toughest like defensive matchups, and then he has to follow it up and go get tough buckets against basically himself. He's got some of the toughest matchups to play against.
Yeah, I mean, in the clip we just showed you, he's up against Delreco Gillespie, who I think had 22 and like 12 in that game. Like, and switches off him just fine, still gets the block, but like his defense has allowed him to play such good offense because he almost plays when this team is moving in transition, he finds himself open in the corner or on the wing for either kick out and drives or for threes so often. And he's because of the prowess of Suter and because of the attention that Kraft garners, oftentimes he's left pretty wide open, which is it's a luxury to have those two as the first two options. But obviously, on a given night, Elmer can turn into that first option. And we'll talk about Peter sooner in a second. But like, you're absolutely right. I mean, the wing play in this league is insane. We're going to see it this weekend against Ohio, but for him to be able to manage it in the way that he does, he's taken such a huge leap from what we saw a year ago, where he was just kind of this athletic prospect type player to becoming a legitimate third option on a 21-7 team. Has been really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like we say he's the third option, but there are nights where he's the first option.
Yeah.
Or even the second option, especially if like Kraft or Suter are struggling. And I think that's such an amazing thing for him, is that like when he becomes that first option or second option, like he doesn't miss a beat. I mean, he picks up right where those guys left off. And he's going to be a really good player, man. I mean, he's whatever Miami NIL collective is out there listening, like pay this man the big bucks, please. I mean, we just saw him get a NIL deal with Kemba Credit Union. So like, I mean, just get this man his bag, please. We do not lose him, please.
We got to keep him in Oxford any means necessary. I mean, this guy what's the word I'm looking for? He is just the firecracker. Like, on a day where you need offense, or you need an impact, he is that impact. He is that guy. So you're absolutely right. I mean, pay him, give him a blank check for all I care. Take it out of my tuition. See if I care. Keep him around. But yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. We talked about Peter Suter at length, but I just want to bring him up one more time. I mean, that bank three. Oh my God. And that place erupted when that thing went in. I was sitting I was next to some of the other guys on press row, and I said out loud, like, oh my God, do not shoot that shot. Banked it in. Shows what I know. What do I know about basketball? I mean, shut me up. Go right ahead. And then the two free throws to tie it in that clutch situation. Miami was dead in the water before that last 2 minutes. And we talked about it. You and I were both in that press conference after the game, or excuse me, I was in that press conference after the game, where Steele basically said Suter's the one who took over that last timeout and said, we're still in this. We're still in this game. And he completely changed the course of this game. I mean, the three itself, the shots itself, but that leadership, that mentality that he brings, that doesn't go in the box score, has been tantamount to this team's performance this year, has been crucial. And I think that's the biggest difference I've seen between this team this season and the team last season, is that when Miami would fall into these little deficits or fall into these little runs, that would be it. That was the end of the game. Miami would just kind of wither and collapse. This year, Miami's been down 10, 12 points at points this year, and they still find a way to come back and win, especially on home court, especially in front of that home crowd, which has been so good for the last 2 or 3 weeks. So I just want to make sure we shout out Peter Suter, because, I mean, his impact on this roster, even outside of the obvious numbers, has just been insane.
Miami's 15-1 at home this season, or something like that, or 13-1, something crazy like that. But I guess 13-1 would make more sense, because they play about 30 games, half on the road, half at home, or something like that. I don't know, something like that. But regardless, Pete Suter has just been incredible. Travis Steele, we'll talk about him at length and call him the Swiss Army knife, right? And I remember he used that term a lot with Bryce Boltman last year. But Peter Suter is Bryce Boltman on steroids. I mean, I liked what Bryce did for our team, for the team last year, but Peter Suter has taken it up, to the next level. I don't know. I kind of chuckle to myself, because I look at some of the transfers from last year versus this year, and it's like the guys that Steele has brought in is just the next evolution of those guys. So Darwishi Hunter, he was that shooter. He could, he was probably a little more on the ball than say Kraft is, but they both wear that number 4. They both can shoot, the lights out of the ball. Bryce Boltman and Pete Suter are both that point forward, Swiss Army knife, do it all, jack of all trades. But Pete Suter's that next evolution up. And honestly, I think it'd be funny if those, some of those guys were to transfer, and there's just the next evolution up of those guys.
The next evolution of Peter Suter might be Luka Doncic. You know what? I'm gonna pause that real quick. I'm going to retract that statement. That was a little aggressive from me.
No, the next evolution of Pete Suter is like, he's the next evolution is like a high major player coming down to play mid major after like an injury and whatever it may be. But I mean, yeah, like you said, this is a team that like, it like when they were down last year, it was just kind of like, oh, roll over and die mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, we lost the game. But like this year, and we've seen it so many times, just like when they're down, they don't give up, man. Like they kick and fight and scream and crawl and scratch, like whatever you want to say, to the very end. And this was no different.
100%. And I think, well, we won't spend too much time on it because like it's NIU. I think they're 5-23 this season, but I think the NIU game after the Kent State game is a great momentum booster, especially going into the last 3 games that are going to be pretty tough. So I mean, the NIU game was about as close to a perfect performance for Miami as we've seen all season. The offense was rolling. I think they shot like 50% on the game. I think they shot 40% from 3. I mean, they got close to 90 points, and I think NIU shot close to like 35%. And Miami led for 38 out of the 40 minutes, and they didn't trail once. Like I asked Steele in the postgame, like you've asked all season for the perfect 40 minutes from your team, or from like a full 40 minutes. Where was this? And he said it was pretty darn close. I mean, the last minute they kind of let human nature take over, which has happened a couple times this season. But up and down the lineup, that was the cleanest Miami game I've seen so far. Defensively, offensively, like the offense looked smooth. It looked, efficient. The defense looked tough. They were forcing tough threes at the buzzer. If they can get that level of production into these last 3 games and roll into Cleveland with this level of play, this is a scary team.
Yeah, I mean, NIU, like we won't talk too much about it. I mean, like you said, really, really close to perfect. I know Steele at halftime when I talked to him, he was like, yeah, the execution down the stretch there wasn't great. And I was like, all right, those last 2 minutes, I'm like, you're being nitpicky. I mean, you're up 30 at half almost or something like that. But that's what a good coach does, right? He's, you're never satisfied, which is exactly what you want. But yeah, I mean, NIU was playing without 3 of their starters. They're kind of like a hurt, for lack of better terms, they were a bit of a hurt puppy. They just kind of were running around out there. But a great game from Elmer and Byers. Really good defense. Byers had a career high points, 22. Elmer's one shy of tying his career high at 22. But yeah, I mean, a really good game, momentum wise. Also, shout out Brandon Byers. Like every time I asked him a question about himself, he was just like, "Yeah, the team," and I'm like, "All right, that's a very good mentality from the freshman."
It's great mentality. That's what I asked you.
But yeah, I mean, overall, it's just a good game.
100%. Well, before we move on, I want to quickly preview the Ohio game this weekend. Talked at length when the Ohio game took place. It's OU hate week once again.
OU hate week. Sorry.
OU hate week. It's once again. It's like, what is this? Like the 6th OU hate week. It's like pretty much an actual fraction of our year at this point.
Every week is OU hate week, really, but.
But yeah, I mean, this is still Ohio is still a very good basketball team. Obviously, they didn't perform great against Western Michigan. They coming off a loss, 82-73, but AJ Clayton's back in that lineup. Obviously, didn't have a great night against Western Michigan, but they're starting to get healthy. And when they perform at the level that they performed at, especially at Millett, that's a tough matchup. And honestly, I don't know if we didn't have the home court advantage if we pull out that win, especially going to Athens now after we beat them in the first game. This is going to be an emotionally charged game. This is going to be a heavily contested game, especially with Ohio kind of looking to secure their seed in the MAC tournament and Miami kind of looking to keep their momentum rolling. We're going to see the best of both teams in the best way. And I honestly could not be more excited to watch this game.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things going into this game. You mentioned AJ Clayton's getting healthy. In that first game, OU did not have AJ Clayton and another front court presence. I'm forgetting his name, but there were 2 guys who were out who play in the front court, and they were sort of like essentially their third string center against Antoine Woolfolk, which is never a fun task for any forward, much less your third stringer, or even if he was the backup. I can't remember. But this is, like you said, this is a team that's coming off of a loss against Western Michigan. They're very emotionally charged. They lost on the road in kind of heartbreaking fashion against the Redhawks, so they know that like they have that, the ability to beat them. Jackson Pavletsky, I mean, he's gonna come in with a chip on his shoulder because he blew that last second layup that would have tied the game for Miami. I think Woolfolk has got to stay out of foul trouble. Him and Potter both got to stay out of foul trouble, especially with AJ Clayton. I mean, he looked really, really good in that Akron game. And I mean, look, they beat the crap out of Akron. And we kind of saw the recipe to beating Akron is that low post play, slowing down the pace of play. Akron ranks 14th, and I know I'll get off this in a second. I just want to talk about this, but Akron ranks 14th in the nation in pace of play, and they're the shortest team in the nation by average height.
Yeah.
And AJ Clayton had a great game. And it's like that's what you have to do against Akron. You slow it down, make them play at your pace, and just body them inside. And you know what? Like I think OU can do the same thing against Miami. Miami, we've seen, is not a very good team at changing paces. Now there's a lot of like similarities between the two teams, but I mean, look, I'm not gonna lie, man. I would not be shocked to see Miami lose in Athens. My gut feeling says it's not going to be particularly close, but I hope I'm wrong. I do really hope I'm wrong. I don't want a Miami loss, of course, but I think OU has a lot riding on this game. So
I also think that our gut feelings have been conditioned of the fact that we've been watching pretty bad Miami basketball for the last couple of years. This is a different team. This is a team that I don't necessarily agree with your statement that they don't change paces. Well, we've seen them play in, slower games and pull out wins. We've seen them been able to adapt their offense and been able to adapt their defense. I do think you're right that the post is going to be the area to watch in this game. If Woolfolk and Potter get into foul trouble and Elmer's forced into that big man role again, Miami's in trouble. I think you're absolutely right. I also think that Ohio's going to come into this game with a chip on their shoulder and looking to fight. In years past, this would scream Miami loss. This is not years past. This is a different team. This is the culmination of 3 years of work under Travis Steele. And I think that if there's ever a time to kind of make your statement going into March and going into Cleveland, that you are here and that you are going to compete in the tournament and hopefully in the NCAA tournament, it's on Saturday against Ohio. You win that game on away floor in a tough environment with a now close to full strength Ohio team. I know they're still without Aiden Hadaway, but closer to full strength Ohio team. You can go 2-0 against your rivals with 2 games to go until the MAC tournament as the second seed against one of the best mid-major teams, behind one of the best mid-major teams in the country in Akron. That's a pretty good resume, especially for year 3 of a program that hasn't really seen this level of success probably in this century. So, or at least since like the mid 2000s. So I do think that Miami has their backs against the wall on this one, but I'm hesitant to fully say that like I'm expecting a loss. I could totally there is a world I can see Miami rolling in, shooting the lights out of the ball, pushing the pace, making Ohio play their brand of basketball. Again, a lot needs to go right for that to happen, but I don't think it's fully out of the question.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to sound too pessimistic, because I do see a world where that happens. What I will say about my change of pace comment, they don't like changing the pace when they're not the ones doing it, or they don't have enough time to control or figure out that change of pace. And I like, because you're right, we have seen them change their pace, and they are good when they have that time to adjust. But from what I've seen from Ohio, kind of after that Miami game, is that they are really, really good at making teams play the way that they want to play them. So they're going to go fast, and then they're immediately just going to hop on the brakes and slow it down. And they're just going to keep doing that over and over and over again. And I mean, this is kind of like a Jeff Bowles calling card. is that he just changes the pace in the middle of the game, and it's so hard to recover from that because by the time you're ready to play, by the time you adjust to playing a fast course pace, they're just going to say, nope, we're going to go throw it down to AJ Clayton. He's going to go do work on the block.
Yeah.
And that is something that Miami has struggled with. We saw it in the Eastern Michigan game, right? It was first Jalen Terry and Christian Henry playing small ball, fast pace. We're going to push the tempo, shoot threes. And then it was, okay, we're going to get it to Dyshawn Nelson on the block down low in that second half. And it was a tale of two halves. Like by the time Miami adjusted to kind of playing that fast pace, it was like, okay, they're going to slow it down. They're going to work on a Wolf Hook. They're going to work on Potter with Nelson. And I mean, Eastern Michigan just had a perfect game plan. And that's what I'm afraid about for Miami.
Yeah, I agree. Even obviously rivalry game, always want to win, but at the end of the day, Miami's still going to be in Cleveland. Before we run out of time, I want to talk about another team that just clinched their way to Cleveland, the women's basketball team. I'm now fired up. I get to watch both the men's and women's team in Cleveland for the weekend. That's going to be really fun. I'm fired up. It hasn't been as sort of looking for impressive the last couple of weeks for the women's basketball team. The Buffalo game at home. Granted, Buffalo is a very good team and are going to be one of the favorites to win the conference tournament. But as Coach Box put it, they were really bad. It was not a fun game to watch. There wasn't a ton of exciting action on offense. The defense wasn't great. Really good to see them bounce back with an overtime win against Eastern Michigan. Granted, the Eastern Michigan is 2-25 or whatever they are. I think it's 2-25 after that loss. Having to go to overtime to win that game is a little bit concerning. But again, they're going to Cleveland. I think we talked about it. I think they're like a year ahead of schedule. This is Coach Box's second year. If they go on Travis Steele's 3-year plan, who knows what happens next year for this team. So obviously a lot to be excited about. Angelina Gonzalez continues to put together a resume to compete for Player of the Year. Had a 20-point game against Eastern Michigan. Wasn't great in possession. I think what was the number we wrote down? I think it was 7 turnovers.
7 turnovers, yeah.
So the scoring's there. Obviously, the turnover number's got to come down. But there's a lot to be excited about with this team. I mean, it's kind of the same thing we've talked about all season, where if this team puts together the defense performance we're capable of. I saw a tweet the other day of like, it's really funny when Santa Clara just stops the men's Santa Clara team just stops teams from scoring. There's a screen grab of like Santa Clara had held their opponents like a 25-minute drought of field goals. Miami's done the same thing twice this season, where they've stopped a team from scoring a field goal in over 15 minutes of game action. If that defense comes to play over the last couple of games and that offense with Gonzalez, Treader, and DeVries and Singer keeps rolling and that transition offense is working, who's to say Miami can't win 3 straight games? They've done it a couple times this season. I could, again, in my mind's eye, again, wildest imagination, there is a path to a clean sweep in the MAC tournament for both the men's and women's teams taking home the trophy in Cleveland.
Yeah. I mean, you got on me for saying that last week, but now the picture is becoming a little bit clearer, right?
I'm starting to drink the Kool-Aid a little bit. I'm starting to jump on that bandwagon a little bit.
It's funny because like both of these teams could obviously go and clean sweep the tournaments, but then they could also like have the most embarrassing first round loss that we've seen. They're 2 sides of the coin. But regardless, like you said, Buffalo is tough. We're not going to touch too much on that. EMU, that was one of those games where you're like, okay, great, it's a win, but then it's like, okay, that would have been a really, really bad loss to a team that has 2 wins this season.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, overall, 4 players in double digits. Gonzalez, 25-5. Again, we'd like to see that turnover go down. Amber Treader probably had her best game of the season, 16, 17, and 2 blocks. Katie Richardson came off the bench, had 12 and 3 rebounds. Tamar Singer, 10, 6, and 7 steals, by the way. All right, cool. It's
an eye-popping number.
Ilsa DeVries, she had 8 points, 3 blocks. So good to see her kind of getting back into it. The number I do want to bring up, 15 assists to 20 turnovers. It's better than what it can be. Mm-hmm. We've seen 15 assists to 35 turnovers in a game. Yeah. So it's better. But again, really got to cut down on turnovers. But this is their first MAC tournament berth since 2019. And I think that was the last time. Yeah, I mean, the last time I think Peyton Scott was on that team. I mean, I'd have to.
Before I enrolled, and I've been here for 5 years, so it's you're testing me.
Gosh, actually, I know we're coming short on time here. I want to look at that roster real quick because I want to see if she was on that roster. But yeah, I guess since the first time was 20, I guess it'd be 2018, 2019, right?
Yeah.
Or would it be 2019? Yeah, it'd be 2018,
No, it'd be
2019.
2018, 19.
She was not on that team. Wow. Wow, I don't even know any of these names. Oh no, I know. Oh, Vanessa Geraltz. She was on that team. Okay, I know Vanessa.
I was
vaguely.
a junior in high school during that season, and I'm now close to 24. So it's been a while.
Yeah, been a while. They've been through 3 different head coaches since that point, or I guess maybe 2 different head coaches. I don't know if you count Duffy as, the third head coach.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, really, really impressive for this team. Hopefully, we can get Coach Box on, whether it's towards the end of his season or soon. But just a really, really good season overall for the women's team. Something they should be really, really proud of.
100%. Well, we are once again out of time. It has been our allotted hour. Ted, any final words before we let these fine folks get back to their weekend?
Oh, you hate week, baby.
Oh, you hate week. What is this, volume? It's got to be volume 4 now, right?
Yeah, 2 for football.
Yeah, we had 2 for football. Did we have 2 for football? Oh, we did have 2
We did, because of MAC championship.
Yeah, you're right.
1 for the women's side, 2 for the men's side. This is 5, and then if you want to count like swimming, and like 6 for the women's swimming because they're down to Ohio.
Yeah. We'll call it volume 6. We'll call it volume 6. Well, thank you again for joining me for this iteration of Red Brick Recap. Thank you to everyone for catching up with us and watching along. We will see you all next week at the same bad time, same bad channel. In the meantime, enjoy the weekend and go Redhawks.